drinks trolley, because that's like thirsty work, I think, just all that hard work remembering who Blue Boy
I remember them well.
was. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
All of them.
Yeah.
So just checking in there with Suze, what drink have you grabbed for us, please, for refreshment?
Well, I went to a beer festival on Friday and I tried this and I thought it was delicious. So it's called Zesty Lemon Cola. It's a sour beer, but it's not actually that sour. But fresh lemon zest, caramel, and all flavours of Coca-Cola as well. It was delicious. 4.7% as well, so not too crazy, and very nice if the sun is shining.
I look forward to trying some of that at an appropriate moment, which is not now. But thank you for that. Today's confession comes from Ross. Bit of an end-of-term feel to this one. Dearest team of forgivers and unforgivers, I would like to own up to a hideous act that myself and a friend undertook many years ago. In my defence, I was a mere kid of 11 years old, and I didn't realise how bad my act was until my wiser years have allowed me to look back with shock and regret. So it is the mid-noughties, and I was a year 6 pupil at primary school. It was nearing the end of our school year, which was very sad as I loved it there. The year 6 teachers and the head teacher, we'll call him Mr. Jones, always did a leavers assembly on the last day where they would invite parents in to celebrate the last 7 years at school and big us up before we left. Now, one of the things that the head always did in this assembly was to read out a sentence or two about each pupil. Something along the lines of, Johnny has been excellent, he's an excellent pupil and is brilliant at maths and an amazing football player. That kind of thing. So, Father Simon, there were 60 pupils in this year group, therefore quite a bit of pre-planning went into this. We were all asked as 2 classes to pick a partner to write something positive about. Then they would do the same thing in return. This we all did, and the teachers then duly collated all the comments and children's names along with it. Excuse me. The teachers liked to have it all typed up and printed clearly so Mr. Jones could read out the list in the leavers assembly. They entrusted in the head boy and the head girl to undertake the assigned important task, and they indeed spent all morning the day before doing as they were bid. As any year 6 teacher will tell you, winding down at the end of the school year is a long, drawn-out process, and they don't really know what to do with us. Once the productions are over, we pretty much just played football and went on computers all day.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
Sounds good.
That afternoon, myself and my friend, we'll call him Tommy, were indeed playing on the laptop and killing a bit of time whilst teachers had pupils pulling staples out of backing boards and taking books to and fro classrooms. Whilst we were on the laptops, we were on Microsoft Word and noticed a file on the pupil drive labelled Pupil Notes for Leavers Assembly. We opened it up and there, sure enough, was all the lovely positive notes written up about our fellow pupils and friends, typed up all lovely by the perfect prefects a few hours before. At this point, I looked at Tommy and Tommy looked at me, and we began to chuckle. We then decided to slightly change some of the comments. For example, instead of Sally has a wonderful sense of humour and is so kind to others, we changed it to Sally has an awful sense of humour and smells of poo. Instead of Zach is very clever and great at cricket, we changed it to Zach is not very clever and has a big nose and is rubbish at cricket. Nothing too bad, certainly no swear words used, but I would say out of the 60 comments, we probably changed about 10. We thought to ourselves, if we don't save anything, then no damage will be done, and it would have been a bit of fun for 30 minutes. Our teacher then told us to hurry as we had a class rounders match outside. We just closed the laptop and that was that. Well, the next day happened, our last day of school. We did the usual thing, watched a movie, had our school shirts and leavers books signed by everyone in the school, then went to our leavers assembly in the afternoon. The very last time we would ever be in our primary school. All the children were sat in the hall, all 450 of them, all the teachers and all the parents. We were sat at the back of the hall, and the plan was for the head, Mr. Jones, to call us down one by one to the front of the hall while reading the complimentary sentences about each and every one of us. Mr. Jones was a lovely guy, but a bit dithery, and would get a bit nervous. And when this happened, he would go into autopilot. He began to read out a few names from the printout in front of him. Erin, come on down. What a wonderful pupil. Erin is a great role model to everyone and always cheers people up when they feel sad. Freddie, a legend on the football pitch with an excellent mathematician. His autopilot continued. I don't think he'd registered what he was reading out at this point. Betty, come on down. What a disruptive pupil. All the teachers loathe dearly. Jack, a great pupil who has bad breath and a silly haircut.
Oh, boy.
Jessica was an amazing Wicked Witch in the Wizard of Oz school production and didn't need any makeup for that. I looked across at the audience. The children were laughing their heads off, whilst the teachers and parents sat there open-mouthed and were gobsmacked. A big chorus of shushing was booming through the hall like the sound waves. Mr. Jones was slowly realising what was going on, and his nerves began to kick in. He then started to just make things up. David, what a great guy. George, well done, George. Father Simon, my heart just sank. Mr. Jones did really well, thinking and speaking on his feet, but it was so awkward to watch. I was called up, and of course my comment was wonderful. All 60 eventually were read out in what could only be described as the longest 20 minutes in history. Off we went out of the playground, to 3 cheers and a big tunnel by some of the pupils. I could see out of the corner of my eye Mr. Jones having a bit of a heated conversation with a couple of the parents and one of the Year 6 teachers. I just kept on walking straight out of the school grounds, never saw them again. I can only imagine the kind of discussions that happened after that, but I was out of school forever. Father Simon, for forgiveness, well, pretty much everyone, but Mr. Jones, our Year 6 teachers, they should have checked the comments, and at least the last day was one to remember. Many thanks, says Ross. Well, I think it's an innovative end of term, and at the end of term, all kinds of weird stuff happens.
Yeah.
And I think Ross was certainly ingenious, but is he going to get sat on by Sister Susie? I suspect so. Go ahead, Suze.
Well, I don't know, Ross. I just think about if I was one of those other children when I was back in school, I think I would have been really upset if the teacher had said horrible things about me. And, as you said, you were only 11, but if you were 11 receiving those comments, it'd also be really horrible and a bit mean, and in front of all the parents and all of your friends as well. Just not very nice. And I think for that reason alone, I can't forgive.
Betty, come on down. What a disruptive pupil you are, Brother Matthew.
Yes, I'm going to forgive. I mean, come on, Mr. Jones. How are you not reading these things before you read them out live? That's not on at all. Also, maybe, whisper it, but maybe it was actually an honest review of some of these kids. I'm sure they're all lovely, but I reckon Betty was pretty disruptive, and maybe Tony could have been looking at his personal hygiene a little closer. So, for all of those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Ross for his ingenious end of term? 61054, first word is Simon. Just before the news, however, we had an end of school year confession from Ross. And there's a primary school story about the Leavers Assembly that the nice, kind headmaster always had, and always tried to say something nice about every single pupil. Except that these were altered by Ross and his friend Tommy, so that at least 10 of them were rather embarrassing. Anyway, the people's verdict is in. Here it comes.
Everyone forgives tonight. Rick in Petworth says, forgiven. What a hilarious Year 6 prank. He says it was an accident, but I don't believe him at all. He knew it would be brilliantly funny, and it was. Millie in Kent says, forgiven. Brilliant confession. This is all the headmaster's fault. Number 1, he should have read the script through before reading it out. And number 2, whilst he was reading it out, surely you'd realise you were speaking badly about a bunch of pupils. And finally, Eddie in Edinburgh says, forgiven. Clearly, this is the fault of Microsoft for introducing the autosave function to appease a minority of people who don't know how to save their work regularly.
Very interesting, very observant. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Rick. Thank you for all the verdicts that have come in. And actually, head teachers, some confessions from you. Now we've got to the end of term, end of year. Maybe you can be thinking you're DMOB happy as well. You can keep them anonymous if you wish. Just let us know and send us a confession to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Well, it's thirsty work, this radio business, and particularly in this heat. So we need something decent from the drinks trolley. What have you selected today, Suze?
I've selected a lager because I thought that would go quite nice with the sunshine. It's called Infinity. It's 4.6%, so not too strong, really nice and tasty. And it's a Hell's lager, very delicious.
Very nice. Thank you very much indeed. I'll have half and I'll wait just a little bit. Certainly, good. I need to read this confession, which comes from Mr. Burton. Thank you, Mr. Burton, for sending this confession. You get the smart speaker. already. Dear Simon and the Confessional Collective, in 1985, we were expecting our second child, and because we knew it was going to be caesarean, we agreed in advance the date for the birth with our local hospital in Kent. So on the day, I arrived at the hospital with my wife, who was duly wheeled off to get ready. I had been asked if I wanted to attend the birth, and as I did, I was requested to go to the room used by doctors to change into their scrubs. Well, what a thrill, going through a strictly no admittance door in a hospital. I had been asked to get changed and then go through to the doctor's restroom, where I'd be called into the maternity ward at the appropriate time. I'd been told in no uncertain terms by a rather forbidding sister that I would be the least important person attending what was, in effect, an operation, and if I was not prepared, they would carry on without me, so be ready. In the changing room, I was faced with rows... Well, that's serious sister business. In the changing room, I was faced with rows of doctors' uniforms, each consisting of a smock, trousers, hat, and face mask, plus a pair of clog-like shoes, all pristine white. Removing my shirt and trousers, I found the appropriate size uniform and put it on, immediately transforming into a passable impersonation of a doctor on duty. After putting my clothes in a locker, I moved, as requested, into the doctor's rest area, where I selected a seat in a quiet corner and waited to be called. A number of doctors were wandering around and chatting, and while I was casually observing what was going on, I noticed, to my horror, that I was the only doctor wearing socks. Mine were black and contrasted agonizingly with the rest of my white outfit. At this precise moment, another doctor came and sat opposite me. Assuming me to be a colleague, he started describing issues that he had experienced with an operation earlier that morning. At that point, the sensible thing to have done would have been to point out that I was just a dad waiting to attend a birth, but no, I just went along with the conversation, doctor to doctor, as it were. Not very smart. Excuse me. During this chat, I could have sworn that the other guy looked down and noticed that I was wearing socks. He didn't say anything, but he knew that I was breaking some kind of high-level hygiene rule, and I would be outed as an imposter and ejected from the hospital. He asked me if I would like a coffee, and I said that I would. He went into another room to a coffee machine, and whilst he was away, I removed the socks. I couldn't risk taking them back to the locker in case I missed my call to the ward, so my plan was simply to put them in my pocket. However, and for reasons I still don't fully understand, the smock had false pockets, which had no bottom in them. This meant that I had to hold the socks in my hand inside the pocket, which would have been okay if a little strange looking, except that when the other guy returned, he passed me a coffee, which I accepted with my free hand, whilst at the same time offering me a biscuit, which I had to decline because my other hand was stuck in my pocket holding the socks. I noticed that he glanced down and he saw that I now had bare ankles. At which point he frowned slightly with one of those looks that says, I need a break, I'm hallucinating, whatever that looks like. After a short while, this doctor was called away, leaving me briefly on my own again. I was concerned about going into an operating theatre with a pair of socks in my hand.
Yes.
To be fair, they were clean on that morning.
Oh, good.
And so I decided to hide them under a magazine on a table in the corner.
Leave them there. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
This was all fine until another doctor came in. He picked up the magazine to reveal my socks lurking on the table underneath. Where did these socks come from? Who on earth has left their socks here? Cries went round the room, to the general astonishment of everyone present.
Bloke with no socks on.
Including, of course, me, as I shrugged shoulders and tutted, along with the rest of them, as to who could possibly be so irresponsible. At that moment, happily, a door opened and the sister announced loudly that Mr. Burton was requested to be present at the maternity ward in 2 minutes. This was my signal to extricate myself from the, well, somebody must have left the socks here, mayhem. The moment was made even sweeter by the fact that I've been called Mr. and not Doctor, as the Mr. title is, of course, given to someone who is an eminent surgeon, a consultant maybe.
Yeah.
I was 28 at the time and could see people with puzzled expressions wondering how I had reached such an exalted position at such an early age. As I approached the door, I casually mentioned I was a specialist from London.
Why'd you
as no one at the hospital apparently had the skills needed for this particular operation. That my father had been a GP.
Where's he bringing all this from?
And I was accepted into medical school at 16.
You're 16?
My medical career could only go downhill after that, but it was worth it for the looks of astonishment and bitterness as the door swung closed behind me. Happily, everything went well with the birth. So all's well that ends well, except I never did get my socks back. Father Simon and esteemed jurors, I beg forgiveness not for the accidental crime of wearing socks when I shouldn't have done, or for the loss of the socks, but instead for causing a number of doctors to wonder how, in their promising careers, they had been seemingly overtaken by a hotshot surgeon who had scaled such career heights at such a tender age, scars that would have affected them for their entire working lives. Well, it was kind of surreal episode of Confessions today with Mr. Burton, minus his socks, causing a lot of concern in the doctor's waiting room. Sister Susie, what do you say?
Well, he should have just gone back to his locker and left them there, shouldn't he? And also,
just said, no, I'm just waiting for my wife who's giving birth.
Just keep your mouth shut. It's just like he opened it and then he didn't stop, did he? And then all of a sudden he was a specialist consultant from London. And do you know what? A very, very funny, Mr. Burton. And I think, maybe they just shouldn't have let you in the doctor's lounge in the first place. And maybe they should have given you your clothes to wear to get changed in a different room, and maybe that would have caused less of a problem. But very, very funny. However, you should have I think it went to your head, didn't it? So you should have just shut up. So I'm not. It
was very British. It was like a comedy of manners. That's what it was. Brother Matthew.
Yeah, that's my favourite one for a long time, and I love it because it doesn't make any sense. Why is there a problem with him wearing socks? And if you are wearing socks, don't take the socks off. And then when you've got the socks off, put them in pockets that don't have any bottoms in the. Why
Isn't that so you can get to your pocket?
Get into your other pocket, but he's taking his trousers off.
Yeah.
What did he need to do that? I don't think that's how it works in surgery. I love that. Oh, so funny. Definitely forgiven. Well done.
People's verdict, please, on Mr. Burton. Do you forgive Mr. Burton for his? He was lying at the end about the fact that he was a consultant.
Well, yes, he was.
Specialist is lies.
But he was the weird guy with no socks on.
Yeah, that's true.
Or pants.
Well, no, I think he had pants.
He had pants off.
Took them off. Left them in the locker.
61054. First one is Simon. Do you forgive Mr. Burton? Yes or no? Just before the news, a confession from Mr. Burton, which I think will just be known as the fake surgeon without socks confession. Although I haven't actually quite worked out what is the problem with wearing socks in an operating.
There's no problem.
How do you know that?
Because I know, because I'm also
really,
a surgeon. No.
Okay. But so maybe someone could explain. But anyway, it was embarrassing, and he took his socks off with hilarious consequences. Yes. Matt has the people's verdict.
Well, Jackie says forgiven, although I have no idea why he couldn't have just left the socks on. His partner was giving birth in the other room. The socks really weren't important. No. But Jean in Burheath says forgiven. As Matt would say, it's the system's fault. Why do they have partners of people having a caesarean sat in the same room as all the doctors? And how is he to know not to wear socks? And Ian in Staff says not forgiven. Very funny confession. My daughter was also born in 1985. Thankfully drama-free. Why did he just stuff his socks into his underpants? Then job done.
Well,
there's
would
a
that
whole
have been
other
acceptable?
confession there.
Yes, that could have had other consequences. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for all the verdicts, and thank you for the confessions. Send yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Everything today is pretty much thirsty work, so we need a very good drink from the drinks trolley. What are you offering today, Suze, live from the pub?
Well, I thought it'd be really nice to make a ginger lemon fizz.
Oh, yes.
Just as a very refreshing alternative to a soft drink, and you can make it yourself. And it's very nice and easy. And it all it involves is ginger, caster sugar, lemons, and sparkling water. Tasty.
Yes, I'm sure that's very nice. Is it not in a bottle? I'll have to make it myself.
Never happy. Oh, we've got to make it
I'll
myself.
make it. And I'll share it with you.
Oh, okay. I'll come down to the pub and I'll ask for it. That'd be very nice. Okay, that's very good. And a suitable refreshment for today's confession, which comes from Richard. We'll give this a 12 certificate.
Oh, dear.
I think. Yes, any other warnings? No, I think we're okay.
Oh.
Dear Father Simon in the confessional, it's written in a slightly perfunctory way.
Oh, is it?
Yes, often confessions are super flowery and they take like 10 pages to get with it. This one does not.
Straight to the point.
Yes.
I like it.
Matter of fact.
Good.
I think so. Father Simon and the Confessional Collective. My confession is as follows. 17 years ago, I was the chief executive of an airline based in Antigua in the West Indies.
Ooh.
So my interest is piqued. We'd had a problem getting the airline operation going first thing in the morning, staff turning up late, sickness, that kind of thing. So I had set up a system whereby management would be on duty early in the morning to make sure everything was set up for the day. On this particular morning, I was on duty, setting an example, you could say, a role model for all my employees. When I arrived at 5 a.m. and it was dark, I went to find the duty supervisor. "How's it going?" I said. "Fine," she said. "All the aircraft are serviceable. The crew have all reported for duty. The weather forecast looks good." And then she said in a very matter-of-fact way, "Oh, and one of our passengers is dead."
What?
And then walked off. This, as you can imagine, was quite a shock. So I looked around, expecting to see someone lying on the floor. There was no sign of anybody. So I rushed after. "What do you mean? Where's the dead passenger?" "Over there," she said, indicating a taxi parked by the curb in front of our check-in desks. Now, I should explain that the terminal building at that time was open air. There were no doors or windows. It was very small, and the distance from the curb, where passengers could be dropped off, to the check-in was only about 20 yards. So it wasn't far away at all. I could see a taxi parked by the curb with its passenger door open. No driver. Slumped in the front seat was an elderly man. I asked the supervisor, "How do you know he's dead?" She says, "He looks as though he's dead."
Oh.
By this time, a small crowd had begun to gather around the taxi. I decided to check on the passenger.
Yeah, let's do
It's a
that
sensible
first.
thing.
Yeah.
I had my high-vis jacket on and an airport pass, so I looked official, and I pushed my way through the crowd. I reached into the taxi, took the man's wrist, tried to find a pulse, and there wasn't one. She was right. He did look dead, and he was. The crowd around the taxi was getting bigger. Phones were coming out, photos were being taken, but there was no sign of a driver, no sign of the police or security staff. I was getting very concerned that when the police arrived, they would shut down our check-in area as a potential crime scene, which would be disastrous for our operation. We were operating on thin margins here, and any disruption to flights would be difficult, to say the least. What to do? Well, clearly the elderly passenger was beyond help. There was still no sign of the taxi driver or any relatives. And then I noticed that the keys were still in the taxi's ignition. Now, what I have to tell you, Father Simon, is at that time, my airline was in fierce competition with another local airline. And this airline had its check-in desks about 30 yards along the building.
No.
Without thinking through the possible consequences, such as, kidnapping a dead person, interfering with a crime scene, that kind of thing, I hopped into the taxi's driver's seat, started the engine, and reversed the taxi 30 yards and left it parked in front of our competitors' desks. I then quickly walked away. As I guess, when the police arrived about 10 minutes later, the area was taped off and my rival airline's check-in was blocked for a couple of hours. So obviously I'd like to seek forgiveness from the elderly deceased passenger and his daughter, who'd been in the taxi with him when he died and must have wondered how he'd managed to move the taxi. I'd also like to ask forgiveness from the staff and the passengers of the other airline for the disruption that I caused to their operation that day. And in case you're interested, neither of the airlines are still in business.
Well, you surprised me.
I wonder why.
Well, it certainly takes an it takes an unusual turn. Nice fade, I thought. There.
Yes, smooth.
Yeah, lovely.
Almost sort of Faulty Towers-ish, I think, in its conception and its execution. Let's check in with Sister Susie for her verdict here.
Well, I don't really know what to say to this one. I just think you could have been tampering with evidence. You had your fingerprints all over it. Someone could have come looking that you were involved in whatever was going on, all just because you didn't want your airline to be disrupted. And I think that isn't enough of a reason to get involved in those matters. Also, why wasn't an ambulance phoned or, just waited for the police to arrive? Surely they should have been something you could have done on that respect a bit sooner. And so just because you didn't think about, what about the family of this person? They might have been there, saw you move the car. It's just not good enough, really, is it? And you're a manager. You should have known better, so I'm not going to forgive you.
Could have been criminal activity involved. Could have been local gangs, or it
all
could
of that
be
stuff.
It could have been a spy.
Yes, could have been all those things.
Who knows what was going on, Brother Matthew?
I'm going to forgive. I mean, he was going the extra mile for work, wasn't he? He was making sure that his line wasn't getting affected by this. And was he tampering with the crime scene? Probably. But, you know, needs must when you got to keep your check-in open. And where was the taxi driver in all this? On the run or something else? Disappeared. Yeah. Mystery. We don't know.
The taxi driver.
Taxi driver. I reckon it's that's suspect number one for me.
Yeah.
So does it really matter that he moved? It probably does because he's got prints all over the wheel now. But he didn't get arrested, so that's good. And justice was served, probably. We don't know. So, yes, all of those reasons I'm going to forgive.
Making less sense than normal.
Yeah.
I have to say, the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Richard? Is all fair in love and airlines? 61054, first word is Simon. We have the people's verdict on tonight's top confession, which came from Richard. A story from Antigua 17 years ago. A story of a dead man, a taxi, and a rival airline that took the blame. Anyway, the people's verdict is in. Here it comes.
So Michelle in Chester says, not forgiven. Who moves a dead body? I know he didn't touch it, but moving the car with a dead body in the front is just gross. But Hannah in Bournemouth says, forgiven. Ultimately, he didn't interfere with the actual body. He just moved the cab a few paces up the road. I'd have done the same.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. John in Worcester says, you have to forgive a person dealing with a terminal situation in a terminal. And Samantha from Edinburgh says, the jury's still out on this one. However, I just wanted to say, your confessions are absolutely next level this week. We've been howling with laughter.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear. Thank you for all the verdicts, and thank you for the confessions that come in. You can send yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk, and hopefully something long and refreshing, maybe a bitter lemon with ice. You never know. What are you serving up, Suze?
Well, you could have a bitter lemon.
Yeah.
I was just going to suggest water because I feel like everyone should stay hydrated when it's really, really warm. But what I think is very refreshing is a very tall glass, lots of ice, and an Orangina.
Yeah, I'm thinking lime and soda, actually, if we're being non-alcoholic. Matt, what are you thinking?
Rum and Coke.
Rum and Coke, okay, thanks very much indeed. Today's confession comes from G. That's G-E-E, but it's G, as in Gee Whiz. Simon, what is this? Are we going to sit down? No, I think this is fine. It's a kind of a back in the day.
Oh, really?
I am G. It's 1983 and I was 13 at my secondary school in Leicestershire. And to say that me and my mate Kat were both, I wouldn't say lazy, more uninterested in the boring schoolwork would be an understatement. I think G and Kat are both guys, by the way. Okay. At that time, we only had a couple of lessons together, but in those classes that we did have, we did as little as we could. In the maths class, we actually didn't put pen to paper for around 2 months.
Right.
What?
So we get the picture. Maths was the last lesson on a Thursday, and the lesson before was chemistry. The teacher in chemistry had just told us, fortunately, this is genuinely what G has written in the voice of Ray Winston, because that's the way they talk in Leicestershire.
Yeah.
I want all your term coursework on my desk tomorrow so it can be marked towards your end of year exams.
Wow.
Coursework on my desk tomorrow. Shut it.
Yeah,
well,
right.
This posed a problem. Kat and I had not done anything. Literally, we'd done nothing. Our workbooks were empty. And we left that lesson slightly worried about how we could resolve the situation. We went from chemistry straight to a maths lesson and continued doing very little. We had a student maths teacher at the time, and he immediately took a dislike to Kat. During the lesson, Kat was swinging on his chair, and as usual, the board rubber came hurtling through the air, different times, Father Sam, and bounced off Kat, who immediately fell back off his chair and started screaming in pain, clutching his arms, saying, "It's broken, it's broken." It sounded a little bit like the Verger in Dad's Army.
He did,
Sorry
he?
about that. I'll tell his reference.
Yes. Another one.
He was rushed out of the classroom and off to see the nurse. That evening, I went to the local park where I found Cat playing football. No pain, no problems. I asked him, what are we going to do about chemistry? He just smiled and said, don't worry, I have a plan. The next day, Cat appeared in school with his arm in a sling and a sob story about how he had chipped the bone in his elbow when he fell off his chair. All of this was completely untrue. I asked how his arm in a sling was going to get us both out of our chemistry coursework. And again, he said, don't worry, I have a plan. We both walked into chemistry and Cat was without a care in the world. Me, very worried about how much trouble I was about to be in. Now, back in the 1980s, the chemistry labs were a lot different than they are today. They had high stools, Bunsen burners, and behind every bench, in its own wooden carrier, were four glass flasks. One with hydrochloric acid, one with sulfuric acid, and the others had alcohol and alkali. These were different times. Obviously, we're entering dangerous territory.
I'm already worried.
But that's exactly the lab that I was in back in the day.
Yeah.
As the lesson drew to a close, the tutor, who Simon again sounded just like Ray Winston, said, as you leave, will you stack your workbooks on the end of my desk? This is exactly where the acids and alkalis were. And Cat said, make sure your book is last, as everyone filed out of the classroom. So I watched as Cat put his book on top of all the others, and then I put mine on last. Cat then turned around and his arm that was in a sling knocked the sulfuric acid over everybody's work. The acid destroyed all the books. The tutor ushered us away and spent lunchtime cleaning it up. When we got all our results in, we all had A's.
Yes! Oh, fabulous.
So I'm not now, obviously I realise that this is a very unwise way to proceed, and the only way you should really get an A is by working hard.
That's so true.
And doing the revision and listening to what your teachers tell you. But anyway, says G, I'm not asking for forgiveness from the teachers or from the school, but from my fellow pupils for destroying their work. But actually, I didn't do it. It was G that did it. All names have been changed. Really, I'm not quite sure about that. But anyway, that's...
right. Maybe they weren't.
It's 1983.
Yeah, it's fine.
And that's the way chemistry labs were. I suspect there are quite a few chem lab confessions along these lines. But Susie's not going to be pleased, I don't think. What do you say to G?
G, and do you know what? It's ingenious thinking by Cat, but I feel like you sound like trouble, and the fact that you got away with doing no work for 2 whole months is just absolutely shocking. And I just feel like very, very funny, but I don't think I can forgive you, because essentially it's cheating, isn't it? And also it's danger.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, this will be smooth.
High voltage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, any second now.
God, I'm fine.
This is going to work so well.
Anyway, Matt, what do you say?
So I'm going to forgive because in a way we all learned, didn't we, about sulfuric acid? So in a way that was like chemistry in a class. Look at what sulfuric acid will do to a textbook.
Yes.
Oh, it'll burn everything down. So and who put the sulfuric acid there? Ray Winston, didn't he?
Yes.
So maybe he needs to have a bit of a refresher on acids and what they do to paper. So we all learned something, and Cat did what he did, what he does best with his thing. So for all those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
No logic in there at all.
Yeah, plenty of logic.
Okay, it's the people's verdict, please. 61054 on the text. First word has to be Simon. Let's stop that. And just before the news, we had a confession which basically boiled down to, in the 1980s, if you didn't do your work, it didn't matter because you could pour sulfuric acid over it and get an A.
Yeah.
Matt has the people's verdict.
Not forgiven, says Sharon in Macclesfield. I feel sorry for the kids who worked hard for the past 2 months just to have their books covered in chemicals and ruined. Zara in Ipswich, though, says, forgiven. As Matt would say, it's the system. Why on earth would you leave a dangerous substance by the books? It was a disaster waiting to happen. And Mary says, completely forgiven. I expect we all did this type of thing at school to get out of trouble. I accidentally spilt bleach on my needlework so that the teacher was distracted from my terrible sewing skills.
Well, it's all coming out. And if you have a confession, you can send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.